In previous videos, I discussed the rules and chords that must be memorized in order to stroke single-syllable words. In this video, I will finish the rest of the lessons from Learn Plover, as well as go over writing more complicated multisyllable words. The first subject I will talk about are prefix and suffix strokes. If you look at the main dictionary, you can see many entries that have weird symbols and curly braces. Take the prefix stroke praoe. For now, you just need to know that the caret says to attach this prefix to whatever comes next, and the curly braces just mean that it's aware of spelling rules. So if I were to stroke this prefix and then the word date, I would get the word predate. A suffix stroke is pretty much the same, except that it is on the ends of words. Take for example hreu. This is the suffix stroke for an ending ly. If I were to stroke quick and then hreu, I would get the adverb quickly. Learn Plover has a list of prefix and suffix strokes which you should definitely get familiar with. A lot of these strokes are pretty straightforward phonetically, so they won't be hard to remember. Just note that for suffixes that have a long E sound, they will usually use the EU chord rather than AOE. This can be seen in the ending ly, cy, and y suffixes. One way that suffix strokes are very useful is that they allow you to write entries that may not be in the dictionary. For example, I could write artistically like so. If I put the strokes I used into the dictionary update window, you can see that this entry doesn't even exist in the dictionary. This is because it is using suffixes. The first two strokes would write artist, and then when I stroke EUBG, that adds the IC suffix. The HREU suffix is responsible for the rest. But why did Plover output ALLY? Didn't I say that this suffix is only for the ending ly? While this is indeed true, these strokes use orthography rules. These are rules that govern how words are spelled. In this case, if we have a word that ends in C, we can't just attach ly to it. English spelling dictates that it must end in ALLY rather than just ly. So if we have an adjective like frantic and we wanted to make this an adverb, we would just use the ending ly suffix. We don't have to worry about spelling, and frantic would turn into frantically automatically. We can also see this with the right-hand G key. By itself, it is actually the suffix key for an ending ing. If I were to stroke go and then press G, I would get the word going as expected. If I wrote tie, then press the G key, I would get the proper spelling automatically, tying. That brings us to the last topic in this subject, which are suffix keys. These are keys, like the ending G, which by themselves act as suffix strokes. Stroking the word lock looks like this, and to make it plural, I simply press the ending S key. I could also have pressed the ending Z key, as it has the same function. But what if I added the Z key with the original stroke? We actually get the desired word of locks, pluralized. If I open the dictionary updater dialog box, you can see that this is not actually defined in any of my dictionaries. What's going on here? Well, Plover doesn't find this in any of my dictionaries, so it tries to see if there's a similar word defined, but without any suffix keys. It sees that it's very close to the entry for lock, except that it has an ending Z, and so it recognizes that the word should be lock but plural. This also works with all the suffix keys as long as it's not already being used in another entry. For example, to write the word cluster would be like this, and I could write the plural form by just adding in the S key in the original stroke. But I must note that you should use the ending Z key instead of S when you can, as you will run into many fewer conflicts. Remember that the S key is used in the GS and BGS compound clusters, and so you may get undesirable results when you try to add these suffix keys. Take for example my original word of lock. If I'd use the S key with the original stroke, I get the word locks, L-O-X. In this case, the BGS chord represents X. Adding ending suffix keys to strokes also works with other keys I mentioned, so I could write pleaded and fasting like so. Sometimes there may be an inversion like in fasting, but it's pretty safe to fold these suffixes in without running into problems. So how would we stroke multisyllable words? Well, we simply sound these out phonetically and we can get the desired words pretty easily. So let's look at the entry for phonetic. This would be sounded phonetic, phonetic. Here is how I would stroke the word automatically. Remember that the O in this word is unstressed, and so we drop it. Automatically. Sometimes we may also have to add the asterisk to show that we want to combine two strokes together. Take for example the word welcome. If I were to just stroke this as it sounds without the asterisk, I would get the phrase welcome, two words. I'd have to add the asterisk with the second stroke so that this would all be one word, though for a word like this I'd usually use a brief. It also doesn't matter where you break up a word, as there will be multiple phonetic ways to stroke a word. As long as you break it up in a sensible way, you should be fine. For example, you wouldn't break up the word keyboard like this, keyboard. Especially since it's a compound word, we just break this up into its parts, that is, key and board. With that said, finding out where you break up words is more easily taught through experience than theory. Don't be afraid to look things up often. Multisyllable words can be tricky and frustrating. Lesson 8 discusses non-letter chords, and while a lot of this is just self-study and memorization, there are some points which I would like to mention. A lot of these entries are just the names of these characters, except that the vowels have been dropped. Two notable examples are the square brackets, which are just bricked, and the curly braces, which are just bris. The ones I've just mentioned are for the opening symbols. For the closing symbols, you simply just add an asterisk to the stroke. In addition to this, a lot of other symbols use approximate sounds to their words. So for example, parentheses use pren, caret uses cart with an asterisk, angled brackets use ang, and so on and so forth. Do look for patterns when memorizing these chords, as it will make this process much easier. Some more general strokes which are useful to know are RR, which is for carriage returns or new lines, as well as this chord for a new paragraph. This inserts two lines and makes the next word capitalized. Going off on a bit of a tangent from Learn Plover, I'm going to talk about the dictionary format page. It has a lot of useful information, and you should keep this bookmarked for future reference. I'll try and summarize the important aspects and hopefully encourage you to have a look later. First is capitalization. To capitalize the next word with a default dictionary, we can just use the KPA and KPA asterisk strokes. The asterisk variant suppresses the next space, which is useful if you're writing a new sentence into a document and you don't want to start with a space. There's also the retroactive way to capitalize, but this isn't in the default dictionary and you'll have to add it yourself. Other case control strokes, both retroactively and regularly, are listed in the dictionary format page. Sometimes you may want to suppress a space, like if you're writing into a text box on a website, and the default stroke for this is TKLS. Again, details and the retroactive version is in the dictionary format page. If you find that a word you want to stroke conflicts with a multisyllable word, you may have to insert a space manually. For example, if I had stroked the phrase space manual like so, you'll notice that it comes out all as one word. This is because spaceman is in the dictionary as one word, and the last stroke I pressed is the ending UAL suffix. I'd have to stroke the SP chord in between space and man so that Plover wouldn't automatically run them together. You can also do this retroactively. Another useful trick is toggling the asterisk key. Sometimes you might stroke a word, but you find out afterwards that you needed to include the asterisk key. Instead of deleting this last stroke and redoing it, you can fix this retroactively. For navigating text, the default chords can be found in the commands dictionary. If I press STPH on the left hand and use RPBG as arrow keys, I can move around a document like so. I could also move word by word by pressing RB or BG at once, as if I was holding Control and pressing the arrow keys on a regular keyboard. For navigating long documents, repeating these chords can be tedious, but you can easily define a chord to repeat the last stroke. I use the number key by itself. That brings us to the last Learn Plover lesson I would discuss. If you press the number bar, it acts like a shift key and turns the top row of letters into numbers like so. These follow steno order, so you could write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 6, 7, 8, 9, all in one stroke. For two-digit numbers, you can also invert order via the EU chord. So I could write the number 21 in one stroke, like so. If you want to invert more than just two-digit numbers, you'll have to get this dictionary which contains all the inversions for any length of digits. Of course, this is just the basics of numbers. I'm not very fluent with them, so I'm not really sure if I should talk more about them. I usually just stroke numbers one by one rather than trying to chunk long numbers together. This isn't very efficient, but it works for me. Learn Plover talks about the other techniques you can use to write numbers in steno, so definitely check that out if stroking numbers one digit at a time doesn't appeal to you. And that's about all there is to Plover. Of course, as I've mentioned in my first theory lesson, these videos should not be a replacement for a theory textbook. I think I've done an okay job of summarizing most of the important aspects, but you should definitely read through Learn Plover as it will save you a lot of time and frustration. Again, if there's anything that you're still confused about and not sure, let me know and I'll try to answer your questions. Originally, when I started this, I was only going to make the How Steno Works and Beginner's Guide to Plover videos, but I decided to try my hand at making some theory lessons. And chances are, if you've made it this far, you enjoy watching my videos about Plover. If you have any ideas for other topics regarding steno which I should cover, do let me know and I'll consider it. At this point, I don't really intend on making any other videos. Anyway, that's all from me, and I hope you enjoyed learning stenography. Stay dedicated and you can be proficient in enough time.